Hello and welcome to this Blackwell online podcast. My name is George Miller, and my guest today is John Grindrod, who has just edited a collection of pieces called Shouting at the Telly. Aimed most squarely at what I suppose could be called Generation Bagpuss and beyond, it's full of interesting and very funny pieces, on the highs and lows of the small screen. And what's refreshing about the book is that it's not the usual suspects writing about the same old programmes that crop up again and again on TV's self-referential theme nights. Here, for example, you'll find pieces on the cultural wars played out in one family's generational split over whether the radio Times is better than the TV Times, on the paramount role of editing in reality TV, and the part played by HBO box sets in one couple's nesting instinct. I began by asking John about television's role in his own early years.
I suppose like most people in my generation, because I'm sort of, just coming up to 40, and I think a lot of people in my generation, it was sort of slightly pre-video games and that whole kind of technological revolution, really. So really, growing up as a kid in the 70s, there wasn't really a lot else to do other than watch TV. So there was I was completely obsessed with things like Bagpuss and Doctor Who and Blake Seven and things. So much so that I ended up, when they were getting rid of K9 off of Doctor Who, I wrote a points of view, and they read my letter out, which was the particular high point of my childhood.
And you also mentioned appearing on Blue Peter, and you rather teasingly say after a world record attempt, but you don't say what the world record was for.
No, I know. It was actually the dullest world record of all time. I think that's why I don't mention what it was. It was basically everybody in our town, we created the world's longest bucket chain, which is as dull as it sounds. Actually, you just stand in a huge, long, snaking line and you pass buckets of water up and down it. And we were asked to kind of go onto Blue Peter and kind of show how it was done. So I got to go into the Italian sunken garden, which was very interesting, and got to stroke Goldie, and I did stand on quite a few flowers. And I think a couple of weeks later, when their garden was vandalised, part of me thought, oh no, they've noticed that I've trampled on the flowers, and they think it's vandalism, and that was how sickeningly good I was as a child.
So did you replicate the bucket chain in the Italian sunken garden?
Oh yes, yeah. We had the whole thing going. It was amazing. We had swooping cameras going along the line. It was fantastic. We had just Simon Groom walking around explaining what was going on. To be honest, there wasn't really a lot going on. So he didn't really have a lot to explain. It was and then actually about a month later, amazingly, people in Hong Kong broke that world record. So it didn't even stand for very long. So really dull world record that didn't even stand. So that's brilliant.
But you had your moment of glory, and you tried telling kids today why that was entertainment in the 70s.
Exactly. There's no idea the sheer joy of stroking Goldie while passing a bucket of water along.
So John, tell me why shout at the telly. Why is the telly worth shouting at?
Well, the weird thing about sort of shouting at telly, I think, is that, obviously things make you mad. Something like watching X Factor, I do find that I shout at them, particularly with John and Edward at the moment. It's really difficult not to shout at the telly. And, and it sort of sometimes makes you really angry, but sometimes you just end up kind of talking back to it. So it's not so much shouting, but just kind of joining in with it, really. And I think, there's lots of people that say, oh, TV, it's no good because it's very kind of passive. You just sit there and you don't really interact with it. But I certainly interact with my TV. God, by the end of an evening, it knows I've been watching it, let me tell you.
So, John, this book is not just you shouting at the telly. You've got a whole chorus of people shouting. So tell me how you put together that chorus.
Well, it's a kind of mixture of people that I knew had very, very strong opinions about TV. It's a mixture of kind of comedians, writers, and then just viewers, people that I knew had kind of very, very strong opinions about TV. So there are people like David Quantick, who writes for Harry Hill, for example, who you obviously know is going to be very funny and have lots of things to say. Or Rebecca Front, who's in the thick of it at the moment. Years ago she did that amazing program, The Day Today, where she played a newsreader, and she talks about how about that weird news speak the newsreaders do, and I knew she would be really interesting, and have lots to say. And I think one of the nice things about it was not necessarily asking the people that you expect. So trying to get away slightly from those I Heart the 80s kind of kind of TV theme nights where actually they sort of just talk about the same programs over and over again in this sort of really obvious way. The really nice thing about this is that actually everybody came back talking about programs like Cash in the Attic that nobody ever talks about. That's really nice, because actually loads of people end up watching Cash in the Attic and you sort of don't really know why, but it's just there. Yes. And then it's really nice then having somebody kind of pick it to bits.
Yes.
You think, oh, well, that's particularly satisfying, because that's sort of what watching TV is like, really. It's not really the big programs necessarily always that are the things that kind of bind people together. Sometimes it's Loose Women or something. It's the kind of smaller shows that we all watch, but nobody really talks about that much.
One of the quotes in the book that really stuck with me was from John Peel, and he was writing about Top of the Pops, and he says it wasn't cool, but most people weren't cool in the 1970s. And I wondered, is that one of the biggest shifts, that in the 1970s you could be on the TV with your bucket chain, or you could be in an ill-matched outfit on Top of the Pops, and nowadays so-called reality TV has kind of brushed all that aside, and everything is edited within an inch of its life and confected. Is that something that we've lost since the 70s?
I think so. I think, one of the things that I remember is that, whenever kind of members of the public were on TV in the 70s, all they wanted to do was stand behind, Glyn Worsnip and go and mouth, hello, mum. Nobody actually did anything else. Whereas now, people kind of, if members of the public go on TV, that they want a whole kind of like publicity plan where they're going to end up, and they want to know, how they're going to end up with their own chat show on living TV at the end of it. And it appears to be a much more cynical industry all the way through, really. Like, even the viewers are really, really cynical about it now, in a way that I don't think viewers are quite as cynical about it. Sort of, going back. I think, even in the 80s, I think people weren't as cynical watching it. You didn't think that you could get quite so much out of it, really. I guess it was more of a one-way street, really, and now it isn't. Now, people think, well, I could be on there, I could do that. And that's probably actually quite a good thing, actually, that you're not just stuck watching Frank Boff, that you can actually think, I'm actually better than Frank Boff, I'm going to give it a go, and then prove that you're not. I think that's a very valuable lesson.